party people? It's your boy, your one and only Pokey Pal, MC Popsicle! Thank you. And today, I am so excited. We are talking to Jay Getty, the original Mewtwo from Pokemon, the first movie. I absolutely love Pokemon. I love Mewtwo. I am so excited. Also, shout out to my sponsors. We have Designs by Galarza and Nevin Eyewear. But now, let's get into the video. What up, party people? It's your boy, MC Popsicle, and welcome to Weird Interviews. How you doing, Mr. J?
I'm doing great. How are you, Josh?
Doing absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
It's totally my pleasure. I'm excited to be here. Really am. So it's been a pleasure.
Well,
Finally.
check these out. I got my 95 and 99 Mewtwo holographics right here.
Oh, fantastic! I never see those. No, I see them once in a while. Those are great cards. You got them from the original when you were a kid?
I didn't get them when I was a kid. I had some when I was a kid, and then I don't know what happened to them, but I started collecting really seriously again during the pandemic. So I have a lot.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Yeah, it's amazing how people come back to collecting, and so many people lost their first round of cards. They put them in the back of their car, their tires, and on their bike for sound effects, or gave them to their sister. Their sister was going to sell them, and then they're gone. The parents who put their stuff in the attic are the ones that still survive.
Those are the rich people.
Yeah, I spent too much money on these cards. I'm going to put them in the attic, and then they, here they are. So they come around. So. Well, nice to meet you, man. I'm glad you got those cards, too. That's awesome.
Nice to meet you. So, how did you get into acting in the first place?
Oh, God, good question. I came from a family of musical people. So my dad and my mom my dad's a high school band director. My mother was a singer, so she sang in church. And I was in the choir as a kid, but I was pretty quiet. I was a pretty shy kid. My little brother was actually the extrovert. He was the one who was doing plays and doing local community theaters and stuff. And I was I was a very shy kid, painfully shy. I was an artist, and I spent a lot of time drawing and disassociating and looking out the window and drawing lots of comic book characters, actually. Anime wasn't around yet, but I was really a big fan of DC Comics. Then I became a Marvel person, but first it was DC Comics were my first love as far as wanting to be something outside of myself. And then at the time, Disney was, the 70s, Disney was big, getting bigger, and always was big, of course. But I fell in love with those movies and the animation. There was a big book, this huge book, I don't know how many pages, The Art of Walt Disney it was called. And just beautiful graphics of all the films they'd done up to that point. And I just fell in love with that book, and I think I went through 2 copies of it. It was a very expensive book. My parents bought it for Christmas for me, and I just fell in love with fantasy, but also just the idea of being an animator. So that's where I was going to be. I was going to be an animator. So by the time I came around to acting, it was college. I started doing set design major in college, and then started doing the sets for the plays, and then I had a director say, "Why don't you audition? We're not getting any good guys." So I would go in and audition, and I would get the roles, and then I went eventually to the University of Minnesota, and a lot of the graduate students didn't like me very much because I got cast in a lot of plays, and it just turned into this thing. And I had a mentor in college who said, "You're going to be an actor. You're going to be a great actor, and I believe in you." And nobody had ever said that to me, so I was like, "Wow, you actually noticed that I was in a play." And he said, I'll be your mentor. I'll take you under my wing, and we're going to get you into good grad school. So we auditioned for many grad schools, and we got into Yale, and I was really lucky. And I ran with that and went to New York, and here I am many years later back to being an artist.
Wow, that's crazy, because I write a comic book, and I draw a comic book as well.
Oh, yeah?
I have a series called Popsicle Ghost, so that's really interesting.
I looked a little bit on your online stuff. Yeah, that's fantastic. I got to check that out, because I'm sure now I'll probably fall. What's the theme of that stuff? I'll probably fall in love with that.
It's like my stuff is like it's like sci-fi adventure comedy kind of thing.
It's awesome.
Very weird. But what kind of stuff do you like to draw?
I did a lot of Superman and a lot of Batman and Robin and a lot of Thor. And the kind of the basics, I kind of learned how to draw the basic, comic book characters, the biggies. And Yeah, I was just fascinated with kind of the darker stuff too. I really loved the Joker and the more subversive characters. And I fell in love. I grew up watching the Batman. Thus, the sweatshirt. I have tons of Batman '66 stuff, but that was my generation's Batman because I grew up in the '70s and '80s. So repeats, the first round of repeats of the Batman TV series in the early '70s are what my first awareness of being anything having to do with Batman and Robin. So that was just, if you've ever seen, The Wizard of Oz with all that Technicolor, it was very much shot like that with all this kind of hyper saturated Technicolor. And I loved that. And as a kid, I was very young. I don't even remember. I remember being very scared of the show because I don't think I understood it or its humor, which is pretty dark and kind of sick, actually. Some of it's a little subversive, but I enjoyed the color and the Batman and Robin and the crime aspect of it. And now you see all the jokes and the puns and the funny, witticisms that are there, and some of it not so funny, but it's pretty broad still. And I know a lot of people, it's not their favorite Batman, but I didn't grow up on Keaton. I grew up on those two for my Batman, West and Burt Ward. So
Yeah, I love that stuff. They're just in their own little world. Like that's kind of like a separate entity to me than a lot of the other Batman stuff, but I love it too. It's
that's
funny.
it's its own universe. It definitely is, yeah. And it's funny, the guy who produced that, not to digress too much on Batman and Robin, but he said he received this on his desk and he thought the only way he didn't know anything about comic books, and comic books were just starting to get big again after being away for a while after the World War. And he's like, I just think that they weren't cool. And all of a sudden he said, I just think this is a joke. How could you make this anything but not a comedy series? And so he saw it as something hilariously funny, and he had to get actors who could get both the irony of it and the silliness of it. And I think a lot of purists, people who are really darker Batman fans, didn't like that. And even at the time, the fans like, what did they do to Batman? But now you appreciate it for what it is. But yeah, I don't know if it stood the test of time, but it's a very sweet version of Batman that is there. For me, it's my Batman. So.
Yeah, I love it. I think that it did perfectly at what it was trying to do, and it's really enjoyable because I interviewed a guy, Mike Allred, and he does the art for this new Batman series. He's really big. He's done a lot of stuff, but he did some 1960s Batman, I believe, comic books in that universe as well. So
yeah, they did a Batman '66 stuff revived. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I love it. But also I wanted to ask you, so you were doing a lot of theater is what I was reading.
Yeah.
And what type of characters, was there any type of character that you gravitated to or something that you were getting a lot of?
Oh, well, I got a lot of darker characters actually. I did a lot of comedy, a lot of the ingenues. I get cast in the ingenues, the Romeos and the young lovers, and I was really bad at those. I don't know why. I thought I'd be really good at them too, because who doesn't want to play Romeo? And then you realize that's the worst part in the play. It's where Juliet's the best part, and then there's Mercutio. And so I was best cast in those kind of character roles, like Mercutio. Or, I mean, really, what led me to Mewtwo was I played a lot of darker. I played Macbeth in graduate school. And that was a huge turning point for me as an actor. It's where my drama teachers got behind me and started to see growth. And it's a very dark play, if you know the play at all. I mean, it's not just about the three witches. It's a very much about a man who loses his mind and goes into this kind of fantasy world while he's killing people left and right, but also his wife slips away from him in the meantime while the love of his life goes and she dies in the play. And he's got this beautiful speech, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty place until the end of time. So it's this great character. And that's where I think I just done that like a year or so before I went in for Mewtwo. And I pulled a lot of that from really, I think that's really where I kind of learned how to do that kind of internal monologue stuff, because he has so many private monologues and he's talking to himself. And that's a lot of Mewtwo too. Mewtwo's talking to him. He's got that inner beast he's talking to, and that's very much Macbeth. So I did a lot of those kind of plays. Hamlet, kind of the tortured young lads a lot. So
yeah,
a lot.
That's very Shakespearean, like Mewtwo is, because I rewatched it again just to like remember everything, and that is a deep character, and it's very menacing, and like if you're like 7, that'll blow your mind. Like that's a very deep character. I was shocked.
I think that's why he pulls so many people in. I mean, to me, I always compare him, and it's probably an obvious comparison on a lot of levels, but Mary Shelley's Frankenstein's monster, really. I mean, Frankenstein's it's actually the title of the doctor's name. I think we get confused with the monster sometimes, but his monster, if you read the book, he roams the earth wondering what his purpose is, what he was put there for, why he was created. He's just so angry, he's furious, and he's got all this rage, and he kills people for the same reasons Mewtwo does. You know, why was I put here? You know, excuse my French, but why was I put on this planet if not to destroy things? That's why you wanted me to be here. And when he realizes there's something deeper and more spiritual to it all, it's in the same way he comes to a place where he might still be agonized for his roaming of the earth, but he's got an understanding that there's deeper meaning to life, and that he was created for a purpose, not just to destroy, but to love people, possibly. So, because all of his instincts in Frankenstein are to love something. Picks up a little girl, he wants to play with her, can't play with her, she gets angry, she gets scared, he gets angry, he throws her in the river. I mean, that was actually, I think, created for the film, but those kind of scenes exist in the book, and you know, he doesn't understand the depth of his anguish or his power, very much like Mewtwo. So I just think he's Frankenstein's monster.
Whoa now. Before we continue, I wanted to give a shout out to Nev and Eyewear. They make all my sunglasses. They're the best sunglasses I've ever had. Go to their website, check them out. If you buy 1 pair of glasses, they will give you 3. Also, make sure to put in the code POPSICLE while you're checking out. And back to the video.
So when you were talking to these people about Pokemon and they're introducing you to this character is wildly different than any other Pokemon, by nearly opposite. It's just a completely different character. And
I've never seen him before, yeah.
And so what was your grasp on the character? I see the influences that you've talked about, but how did you grab onto this character and say, I'm going to make him like this?
Honestly, I identified with his anger and his frustration and his sadness, really. His melancholy is what I think those things I clicked into very easily. Those were parts of characters I got cast in a lot, and I had done a lot of that kind of stuff in Shakespeare, but also in theater. I did a lot of heavy roles. I was actually doing a play at the time called, it has a very dark title, but the reason there's a wonderful actor named Matthew Sussman he was Meowth in the actual series, and in the first. He said, hey, they're doing this thing. It's Jap animation, they called it. And it's next door, and you should go and audition for it because I think there's a great part in there for you. And I think he just knew that, I played a lot of dark, and I was doing a play with him at the time that was pretty dark. And she just, a similar character, different kind of torture, but a similar tortured kind of soul. And so I played a lot of those. And so I think that was very easy for me to click into the rage and the sorrow and all that. I wasn't the happiest of children, so it kind of worked for me as an adult, as an actor. And then you get a lot of therapy, and then you realize, oh, I see. This is why I picked this career. It makes me miserable. Why? Oh, I like being miserable. Oh, I see. This all kind of. Then you realize you don't want to be miserable for the rest of your life, and you slowly get out of it. That was me anyway. That was my experience. The more therapy I got, the more I was like, yeah, this doesn't make me happy. So. And I love acting. I do love acting, but I think as a person who was very sensitive, it was great when I got a role and I could get to explore all that darkness. And I did comedy too. It wasn't that I just did dark stuff, but I ended up doing a lot of that. And I think you can go to some dark places, and I don't know how people recover, some people, from that. I think people do films and talk about that a lot, that you can bring up some stuff that you're not ready for always. And luckily, as I started to work as a human being on myself, not just as an actor, as I did the work in therapy and stuff, I started to realize where a lot of it came from. And we all have interesting childhoods. Mine was was not, any more tortured than anyone else's possibly, but it was there was some darkness in my childhood, and I think that became a part of my adulthood very much so, and it was hard for me to kind of move beyond that and become a happier human being until I really explored some of that. And I think that's where it all went. It went into all of my work as an actor, and I would go home and not really know who I was and be miserable and eat popcorn and go to bed. But I don't think I ever really understood the connection between these characters I was playing and my own happiness until I started to work on getting happy. So that was where I started to step away from the business and go, I don't know if this is the best thing for me.
No, it's fine.
I'm going to stop talking about Peter now. I was like, yippity.
No.
Any more?
That's what I want. Like I've
Okay,
been
I went on and on. It's like, shut up, dude.
No. That's what
Okay.
that's what I want. Like I'm very interested in this because that character was very impressive to me. So I was wondering where your head was at when you were doing that stuff because that's very interesting to me.
Yeah, well, I think, and I didn't. Are we recording? Yes, we're recording. Well, I'll tell you the name of the play. I didn't want to put it on. I didn't know when you're going to edit here, but the play I was doing was called, and it came from London, and it was this big deal in London. It was off Broadway. We're actually with Matt, and we were both playing really dark, sleazy. Like I had these two young heroin addicts working for me, and I was hustling them on the street. So that's the kind of I was playing this pimp. That's the kind of character I was playing, and with a British accent, which is why next door I went down and auditioned on my day off of rehearsal, and I was in a pretty dark mood, and that's where. Plus, a really sick world of this play was really sick. It was really dark, and I was playing a very sick character. He was a heroin addict, and he was with two heroin addicts, and they were all dark, and it was really ugly. So I think my head was not in the most Disney of places. So it's probably good that that character came around. But compared to, that was Disney compared to what I was doing. It was very, very dark. So I think that's where the character kind of came out of that darkness that I was working on. But I do think that we call forth the darkness in ourselves for these characters sometimes. And Mewtwo was no exception. It just happened to be while I was doing a very dark character. And I think I played a lot of those in New York when I first got there, some really spooky characters. So I think because I look, I'm not I'm an offbeat kind of looking guy. And I think that's why I got cast in those kind of roles a lot. My eyes are a little bit crossed. My nose is a little crooked. It's a little long, a little too large. Everything's a little, little diabolical. So and those are the parts that are fun to play. Nobody wants to play the hero. You want to play the villain. It's the part that's always, nobody wants to be, nobody wants to be, Ash. We all want to be Mewtwo. Right. That's the part. And I think for kids to identify with the darkness, it must have been, I didn't understand how powerful the film was until I saw it with a group of kids in a theater. And then you had all the kids crying at the end when Ash dies. And that's some heavy duty stuff. Maybe not for a Japanese audience at the time, but it was for us because we weren't used to a lot of that. Death in films is very, it's a lot for kids. I mean, you see it all over in movies like Old Yeller and, there's Sounder. There's movies from the 70s that had dogs dying and, or got shot. Or you see it even in The Wizard of Oz. Toto getting taken away in the first 5 minutes of the movie is terrifying for kids. There's a lot of darkness in that film. But I think I identified with that creepy, dark part of him. Not that he's creepy, but he's physically creepy, but I think to get to play that kind of duality and when that kind of a role was just, I couldn't believe I was getting to do it, to be honest with you. So that's what was great about it. So
the thing about it is the things that Mewtwo is angry about, any human person could probably be angry about those same things, like not knowing why they exist and being expected to fall into roles and not being asked about it. And then you're just kind of like, this is the lot you've been given. Now deal with it.
Go. Yeah. And just being mystified by it and looking at your body and realizing you're a copy of someone and that you're, and you're this mutant copy of them at that, this cute little cuddly Mew. And then you're this Mewtwo and he's got all this power. And it's mind-blowing, really, when you think about it. It's why I think why people respond to him still, I think, as adults. I think that's why a lot of people come to the table when I have these meet and greets and I get to say hi to folks. And they come and tell you their story. They turn into a 7-year-old boy again, but they also tell you that's why they're still fans of Mewtwo, because they feel like they can connect still with his anguish as an adult, and they see the stuff they missed as a kid. That beautiful speech at the end about, it's what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are, and that's really profound in a kid's film or a family film or whatever they'd like to call it. I don't know what they call it really. Technically, it's not really a family film, but it is.
It's
I
it's
guess.
supposed to be, I guess. I was like watching it again. I was like, "Woo!"
It's
They
pretty
put you through
dark.
the ringer.
Yeah, and I don't think they'd make that film today. I don't think that they would put it out in America anyway. Maybe they would. I mean, there's a lot of dark Japanese have a lot of darker, stuff in some of their animated stuff, but even Spirited Away, that kind of stuff is really, really dark. As light as that movie can be, as comedic as that movie can be, there's some dark stuff in there too. So yeah, I think it's the nature of the beast, but also for American audiences, it's got to still be, because kids put this on a repeat. They have many fans have come and said, "Hey, I watched this movie over and over again my whole childhood." I mean, I had those movies too, but this was the 70s and 80s where the VHS, we'd wear it out, but we wouldn't really wear it out like we did later on, where it was the 90s. You'd still, before any DVDs were out, we'd play that thing to death. So
yeah, I feel like kids probably watched it numerous times to try to understand it, because if you're a child, that's like you really have to reach up to understand. Those are some lofty thoughts in that
Yep.
movie. So I'm
Yep.
sure they're like, "Wow, this guy's cool. I don't quite understand everything that he's saying, but I want to."
Right.
And
Right.
that's why when they're older, that means more to them, because they can finally grasp all these thoughts that Mewtwo is having.
Yeah, and as a child, you identified with the anger and the rage. I'm sure, as a little kid, you must be like, "Oh, he's so angry. I get that. I get that anger, and I want to lash out," because he's very childlike and is very primitive in his anger and his, not understanding it, which is very childlike, not knowing why he's angry and getting to have all this power and then blow everything up is pretty incredible. So.
Right. Also, where did the voice come from? Because I interviewed the voice of Superman from the animated series, and
Oh no.
he's just Superman. Like, he just
Yeah.
sounds like him, and it's like, you didn't do anything. Like, I don't mean that in
Yeah.
a
Well,
negative way, but he just sounds like Superman.
well, I tend
Like,
to speak. I tend to speak up here, as you can see. I mean, my voice, if I'm calm and I'm relaxed, it's actually down here. That's when I'm talking to myself, and when I'm on my voice, my Shakespearean voice is depending on who I'm playing. But I speak, a lot lighter, and I want to be taken a little less seriously. So I don't talk like this, but a lot of people, talk like that. And so it is what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are. I'm also sitting on my vocal cords, which is part of why he sounds so kind of, I'm kind of sawing into my vocal cords a little bit, which is why it works when you're whispering. It's not great on a stage, but you have to have some power behind it. But I don't tend to speak, and it drove my acting teachers crazy in drama school that I don't really speak on my voice very instinctively. I tend to kind of, it gets caught in the throat. My dad's like that too. Our voices are up here sometimes. But when I'm relaxed, it's actually down here a little bit more, and that's where my voice is, and that's where Mewtwo's voice is. He's down here. You know what I mean? He's a little bit more relaxed. So when I get up in the morning, I sound like this, and that's usually where I am most of the time until I start talking to people, and then it gets up here, and then I get nervous, and so I tend to speak up in the mask of my face, but Mewtwo speaks on top of his vocal cords and on his chest. It's all down here. It is what you do with life.
how did you look at Mewtwo and say that's this voice for this guy? Because he doesn't necessarily look like he could have any voice. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Well, that's just it. They didn't really show us anything. They didn't show us the characters. They didn't show me who he was until I do not remember seeing the character until I came back to do the role. They didn't show us any breakdowns of the character. So I just thought he was this diabolical monster, kind of like spooky looking. So he must have a low, scary voice because he just sounded, he blows up the entire lab, including the doctor that created him in the first 5 minutes. So I thought, well, he's got to be pretty scary looking. And then he's this kind of kitten thing with this big fluffy tail, which is very strange looking. And we won't go there, but that's a whole other thing. When you finally see the character, you're like, oh, wow. So I'm surprised that they picked, but then they also played me the actor from Japan who played
the character. They played me a little bit of his voice, and I think he was, I think he did a lot of like, I don't want to sound insult anybody, but it was all, it was all kind of growly, and I think it was much more exaggerated, if I remember. And I might be wrong. I haven't seen it in a while, but I think it was just more over the top. So I think I maybe took some cues from that, but I don't remember seeing that until I was already cast. So I think I was just doing an internal monologue thing. I don't really know that I had any art in my choices. I just was doing what came naturally, I think. And I think I was just so relaxed with regards to the darkness of it that I just fell right into it. So probably, I don't know. It's probably
it makes it stand out a lot because it's like this. It's a strange looking character for sure,
yeah.
and then that wouldn't, if you were to see the character, that may not be the first thing you would think of. So when you
Right?
see those two put together, you're like, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a weird combination, but I think that's why it works, because he's got this non-threatening in a lot of ways, this soft legs, this kind of big rear end, and this kind of thick, not real upper body strength, kind of thin up here. So it's this weird, these huge hands. It's this weird, there's spooky things about him, but they're not the main thing. The cat, the feline part of him that gets angry once in a while is fairly timid when it's softened down. Yeah, it's a weird combo. I think it works for that reason, though. I don't think they could have done it with a softer voice. I don't think it would have worked. I don't know, but maybe, I don't know. There's other actors that have done it in the interim, but even the others who are just different. I'm going to keep it right there. It's usually done that way.
So, what did you understand the magnitude of Pokemon when you were doing this? Did you know about Pokemon?
No, and there's a weird thing. I was so ashamed of it, for not the Pokemon part of it, but the job. I had done this and now that I'm no longer in the Screen Actors Guild, I guess I can talk about this. But it was a non-union job, and I had just joined the union, and I wasn't supposed to be doing non-union jobs at the time. So I think I was afraid that I would get it. I was afraid to get it, and then I got it, and I was like, oh, God, am I going to do this thing? I really can't talk about it. And they said, well, you better come up with a fake name. So my middle name is Philip, and Bartlett's the street I grew up on, Bartlett Boulevard in Mound, Minnesota. So I became Philip Bartlett, and that was, I guess, they call your name. I wasn't really thinking about it at any time, but it was the name that I just chose really quickly. And then that became, people thought, oh, this Philip Bartlett guy plays Mewtwo. And then they did a thing called Pokemon Live, which was people in costumes, Mewtwo costumes and Pikachu costumes, at a big, kind of like Disney on Ice, I think. But it went around the country. And in the program, they put my real name by accident. They put Mewtwo J. Getty. And there was no Philip Bartlett there. So they had screwed that up. And I think that was the original company that had the rights for the film. So I don't know how it happened, but it happened. And then years went by. And I think I was very happy to see that in Wikipedia, it said Jay Getty is an actor who died of cancer in Apple Valley, Minnesota. I got the Minnesota part right. So some of it was right. The cancer part, thank God, knock wood, wasn't. But he kind of was dead to a lot of people. So I thought, oh, that's probably good. And I had this kid come out of the woodwork. He's probably in his 20s or 30s at the time. Anybody younger than me is a kid, and I'm 61. So, you're all kids. But anyway, I refer to him as a kid. This kid is probably in his 20s. He said, hey, can I ask you a question just out of the blue on Facebook chat? And he said, are you Philip Bartlett? And I just kind of choked, and I was like, uh-oh, they found me. Here we go. And he said, because I saw a play, and he just spilled all this stuff. It was called Pokemon Live, and that's the same soundtrack as the movie, and we couldn't understand why there was a Jay Getty and then a Philip Bartlett, and are they the same person, and are you him? And I said, yes. And then that became an interview that became online. And then a gentleman named Zach Beck, who's my manager and my agent, called me during COVID and said I was, busy painting and being all COVID-y as we do all this stuff by ourselves. And he said, would you be interested in meeting your fans? And I said, I don't know. I feel weird about this job. I've always felt weird about it. It's kind of creepy, and meeting fans, and I don't know. It just, I'm a little scared of it. And, I'd met fans before and Broadway stuff when I'd done a play or New York and anywhere I'd done a show. Of course, you always meet your fans after the show, but I didn't get how important this film was until I started to meet the fans. But I was aware of it, and the weird thing is that I would see Mewtwo in like Target. I'd see the cards once in a while. But he was so out of my peripheral vision, I didn't even really think about him much. And I really didn't know what he meant to people until I started meeting the fans like a few years ago. And that became profound because it's such a part of people's lives. In the same way that The Wizard of Oz and Batman and Robin and Willy Wonka or the movie Star Wars was my Mewtwo was Star Wars. That was my Pokemon. That first round of movies I saw 12 times in the first year that it came out in the theaters, back when a kid could go for $1 to see the movies and repeat. So I got this whole legion of fans suddenly crawling out of the woodwork, and I guess they'd been there the whole time. I crawled out of the woodwork to meet my fans.
Yeah.
So it's been amazing. It's been this blessing, and I didn't know, and I'm so proud to be a part of it. I didn't think I'd ever say something like that for something that I had so much shame about. Because it was an illegal job, and I was so embarrassed about that, and that's just not cool, and I don't like that I kind of fudged things there, and I just couldn't come to terms with that, so I just forgot about it, really. So I think that wasn't the healthiest solution, but that's what happened, and that's where it came back onto my lap, years later. So you can run from the truth, but it'll find you.
Wow, that's so crazy. Yeah. I was going to ask you about the name thing, because I had to do a little digging to figure out who you actually were, because I came to you through Pokemon. So I was like, who is this guy? And then I was like, he's not a guy. I was like, this is not a person. Who's the real person? Yeah. So I had to dig around a little bit. But I mean, Pokemon is massive, and it seems like it's only getting bigger, really. And then it's like my generation's kids love Pokemon, and Mewtwo's always been like top of the deck. For this video, I looked up the 10 most popular Pokemon on Google.
Yeah.
And it just had Mewtwo, and there wasn't anybody else in the list on Google. What? Yeah.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's funny. That's funny. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm very blessed. And that's the thing. I mean, these people come and everybody's got their story. And some people just want to say hi, and some people want to tell you their story. And I'm so honored to be a part of people's lives. And there was an interview I once saw. Remember the Brady Bunch? There was an interview with Florence Henderson, who played the mother in the Brady Bunch, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, but to sum it up, she said, "If you told me I would have been a part of everyone's '70s mother from their favorite '70s mom, when I auditioned for something as a musical theater actress, it had 6 kids in it, a dog and a maid, and a lot of money spent on producing it for a pilot." She thought, that's not going to get picked up, but she said, then it was, and there I am, and here I am now, and there I am. For the rest of eternity, I get to be somebody's '70s mother, and I'm proud of it. And she says, it means so much to people, and I didn't know that I was everybody's maybe fantasy mom or whatever it was. But she said, I can't question it. I just have to accept it. And I think there are worse things than being, to have to accept that be Mewtwo. So I am really, I'm really grateful for something that I didn't really understand. And that's really what it was. I didn't understand it. Really. I didn't understand. I understood it emotionally as the character when I was auditioning 20 years ago, 25, 30 years ago. But I didn't understand until I got to meet people, and they come to your table and they start to cry, or they get all nervous, or then that's not funny. The crying is not funny. They get verklempt, or they get very nervous or scared. And you realize that that's how powerful that character is for people. And that's an amazing thing. So if it's my legacy, I'm very proud to be a part of that, because not many actors get that. They get that thing that people get to take away and say, hey, this is part of my life, so that's cool. My collecting life, and my parents got involved, and they didn't like the character because they was collecting too many cars or whatever, but it's a part of people's family history, and it's really cool to be. I'm so lucky. That's just amazing to be a part of that, and I'll be very proud of that until I die. So
yes, you should be like that. You did very good work on that, and you elevated the material far beyond what I would think is possible for Pokemon. Because watching it again, I was like, wow, like this is so different than you would think a Pokemon movie would be. Like it's so much more. thought
Thank
put
you.
into it. It was
Yeah,
good.
I mean, I tried to take it seriously. That's the one thing I learned in drama school is you cannot, if no one's going to take the character seriously, how can you? You know, if you have to take it seriously, you have to take it seriously. Even if it's a comedy, you must take their circumstances deathly seriously, because that's the only way you'll be taken seriously by the audience. If you don't invest in it 100%, they're going to smell it and they're going to go fake, fake, phony. Excuse my French, but they're going to not believe it. So.
Well, you definitely did it. Also, according to my research, Mewtwo is still the most powerful Pokemon. He wasn't for a minute, but then they gave him a new evolution, so he's now
Oh, he's
still.
back again?
Yeah.
Oh no, I didn't know he got it back. Oh, see, I knew that his power was taken away by. See, I used to know the name of the character that became more powerful than him, but do you remember the character?
Archimus
Yes,
or
yes, Artemis. Yes, thank you. Yeah, and then he got it back. That's awesome. I didn't know that.
yeah, he
Well,
got
that's cool.
two new evolutions, and also there was a Mew 3 in the manga. Did you know about that?
Yes. That's wild. That whole thing is wild.
Clefairy.
Yeah. I haven't investigated a lot of that, but yeah, I definitely. I mean, I've been told of it, and I've seen the images of what it was. So,
It was
but it
weird.
is. Yeah, it's very weird.
but but anyway, thank you so much for doing this. It's
Yeah.
been really fun talking to you, and it's very interesting. I knew it would be because I thought that character had a lot of really intense. Like it's just a really intense character that seemed like and
Yes.
he's a genius. So I thought it'd be really
Yeah.
interesting to talk to you and see where you got all that.
Well, well, and like they say, you don't get to play people that are smarter than you. You have to come up to the plate if you're gonna. If you get to play those characters, you got to do your research. And of course, I didn't get to research who he was from his history, but you have to kind of give them as much intelligence as you can if they're that smart. You bring to the table what you can of your own intelligence and hope that it reads. but yeah, we don't get lucky that often, and I got lucky, and I'm very proud of that character, and I'm very grateful, more than anything grateful for a job that I kind of was like, I don't want to go on this thing, and I'm so angry right now, and I'm playing this creepy character, and I went in, and maybe because I was so just curmudgeon-y, I got this great role. So who knows? I didn't put a lot of thought into worrying about it. Those are the parts. That was one thing I learned in the business too. It's the stuff it's never what you really want at the time you really want it. It's always something else. So the stuff that becomes something else that you think, I don't want that little part, becomes the national commercial that everybody sees, or becomes something that 25 years later becomes Mewtwo in everybody's heart. You don't know what's gonna move audiences. So I'm lucky. It's a big monster of a thing, Pokemon, but it's a very small part of my heart. It's a big, it's a special part of my heart. So,
Well, it's big to millions of people that are like me or kids, and like a lot of people really love it. So I
that's
appreciate you doing this with me, and I really enjoy it.
my pleasure. Thank you. And I just want to see what I'm working on right here. Just
Oh, show me.
this is what I do in my spare time.
You painted that?
Yeah, I paint Mewtwo for fans occasionally. So this is for a
Wow.
gentleman in Wisconsin. Yeah, this is his Mewtwo painting. So
That's so good. Wow.
yeah, thank you. I get to work on stuff. Brings me joy. So he brings
Wow.
me joy in the dark hours too.
That's amazing.
Well, thank you.
If you want me to, I can put your tag on everything so people can get in
Yeah,
touch. Is that good?
that'll be awesome.
Okay.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Well, have a great day, and thank
You
you very,
too.
very much.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate meeting you. Nice to meet you.
Yes, sir. You too.
And that's about it, everybody. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you, Mr. J. I had an absolute blast talking to you. It was so interesting. Also, make sure to follow MC Popsicle's World on Facebook. Follow the page. Follow it. And now, a word from our sponsors.
First thing is I would like to give a very special shout out to my new sponsor, Big Ideas Consulting. Make money and grow your business the smart way with Big Ideas Consulting. Please check out Ramicus.com for all the MC Popsicle merchandise. We got buttons, shirts, phone cases, posters, everything. So make sure to get on over to Ramicus.com and get you something. Stop! Before you do anything else, check this out. This is a vintage 90s Ninja Turtle figure that was modeled after the turtles from the movie. I love it. And this is a newer turtle figure. I also love it. You should go to the Toy Stash on Instagram and follow them.
They have vintage and new toys. And if you're a toy collector like me, you need to know about them. Follow them on Instagram right now.
Another thing you need to do is check out Step On It Rugs on Instagram. They are insane. They made me an MC popsicle rug. Anything you can imagine, they can make a rug for it. Hit them up. Also, shout out to my shoe sponsor, Solsfig. They make amazing future sneakers that are just bananas. Please follow them on Instagram. You will love their selection.